I'm the president and CEO of Scienturfic SOD. My dad actually started this business over 50 years ago. He passed away in 2019 of leukemia. Honestly, I never thought I'd be a farmer. Growing up, it's funny because I almost wanted nothing to do with this. But my dad and I made a decision about 7 or 8 years ago that I wanted to end well with my dad. I wanted to have the time with him, to be not just father and son, but also friends. And the one language he knew was work and was business.
Good to see you. We're here. This is GC's interview series, gathering knowledge, basically getting different areas of expertise and the knowledge in those areas and kind of unifying them and trying to find similarities and differences to pretty much just essentially help people get a better perspective and a better perception. I do view you I view you in a high regard. You are my mentor. I call you once a month. I just kind of check in on things and we're here with Dave Schlup, CEO and president of Scienturfic SOD. Hi Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you, Nate.
Good to see you. What exactly is like your daily routine, if you were to kind of go in depth on what your typical Monday kind of looks like?
I'm a man of faith. So as soon as I get up, the first thing I do is reflect on the day. It's always good to know you have another day, to make an impact in this life, to, I think, fulfill the purposes God has for you. He's got you here another day and you got to make the most of it. So I give thanks, I pray, read a little of the Word of God. Just kind of make sure your life is just kind of in line with God's heart. Then my days start pretty early. We work on a farm, so, most of the day is honestly even done by 9 or 10 a.m., as you know. I'll be up at probably 4:30, 5 o'clock. I got to, check some numbers in the morning, get some things ready before coming into the office. But then, my routine is usually, coming into the office, spending a little bit of time here, just being able to kind of make sure everything's kind of in order. But then I like to be out in the fields. I like to go out there. I like to see what's going on. Some people need to be in charge. And I think that's sometimes a dangerous place for people to be, if they need to be leading. I can see because I think that part of successful leadership is also a level of servant leadership, meaning that, am I out there cleaning the equipment? Am I out there dusting the shop? Am I out there in the fields? I'm not all the time because we've got people to do that. But I think everyone around here knows that I have no problem, laying the sod myself, going out there, being in the crew, going out in the field. Part of it is to lay the example. But help them to become the best that they can be no matter what they do. It might be a small task, but you help them to do that in the best way and to really give them the tools to really perform and to be excellent.
What kinds of problems do you face to kind of like going through your routine, going over things? What kind of problems do you face and address?
Well, and they say it's lonely at the top, and there's a reason, because you get all the problems. I come from more of an engineering background. My natural tendency is to kind of, stay within order. But I've learned on the farm, half my life is chaos. It's just the nature of it. You can't always predict what the weather's going to be like. You can't always predict, a lot of things that happen, where it's outside, and that's why I pray a lot. We had just seeded a field, and it was a difficult field. It was an expensive field. And I actually remember going, I was like, I prayed about it. I said, Lord, I need rain, because we hadn't had rain for a long time. Well, sure enough, that night, we got so much rain. It was torrential. We literally had lightning strikes, that blew out some power here. We had just so much water. And actually, I went out there and there was standing water all over that field. And I was just like, okay, Lord, maybe a little bit less rain next time. Just dial it back just a little bit. Like usually the things that come to you are the problems. Now you don't get all of them, but you get the ones that are the most important. And so you hear things, and some of it is just managing and helping to understand, what are the sources of those problems and what do you need to do. But you're in the people business, okay? You're dealing with people. They've got some have family situations, some have legal situations, some have problems with their finances. So sometimes the problems are not exclusively, a business problem. Some of them are, some of them are not. So in some ways you got to discern between, what's actually at hand here. Is this a personality conflict? Is this something or a miscommunication? A lot of times it just comes down to just either miscommunication or something was just the wrong expectations, right? I mean, people typically want to do the best they can. Like people usually don't come and say, oh, I'm just going to screw up today. It's more that just something in the process or something in that day just went awry. And so when a problem arises, the first thing you want to do is really ask the question, what is the most redemptive solution to this scenario? Often we take this from an authoritative point of view, or we want to just get in our head and just kind of get something solved and just kind of get it off our plate. But really, the question is more around how are we looking redemptively at a problem? Like, what does it look like to restore what is good? What does it look like to bring about almost a sense of salvation, a sense of wholeness, in a scenario? We had talked about, just what does it look like to take care of somebody's soul? What does it look like to look beyond maybe a problem and see we're dealing with a human person here. We're dealing with someone who might be having legal problems. They might be having personal problems. They might be having marital problems. There's a lot of reasons why problems come about. It's not just because somebody just kind of messed up, which may happen, but often it's a lot deeper. And you want to go after that. You want to go after the center of that and think redemptively. How do I redeem this scenario to restore somebody back to health, to restore a relationship, to restore, their dignity? Like that's part of the decision-making process where you need to look at a problem in a way that really you're dealing with people, and the ultimate goal is to see how do I redeem, how do I reconcile whatever the issue is.
I know that we touched on the foundation, but is there any outside knowledge? Is there anything that you kind of take from something, quirky, something weird, something that you kind of remember, or a lesson that your dad taught you that you kind of bring to the table in dealing with people and how you conduct business? Like outside knowledge that you use to kind of merge with being a businessman and how you conduct yourself as a businessman? I
lay out my days even a week in advance. There's certain things that I think successful people do in a disciplined life that allows them to do multiple things and be very effective in terms of their life. And a lot of times a disciplined life, you have to do things that you don't want to do. I have over 50, 70 different things on my list. But you find the 6 most important things. Some of them take longer, some of them are really easy to do. If you just did 6 things a day, you'll probably be more successful than most people around you, because 2 or 3 of them are super easy. Then it's like, okay, I have to make that email or make that call. Okay, that's pretty quick, but at least I'll get it off my list. And then there's a couple, it's like, shoot, that's going to take me like 2 hours, 3 hours to do each. There may even be something for yourself. I want to go to the mountains. I want to see the leaves turning up in the mountains. I want to, be up at our cabin and clean things out for the winter. Like, you can do things for yourself in those 6 things, but you want to be a disciplined person. Like my dad would always say, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. You have to just look at problems and things of life saying, you know what, it might look like a mountain to climb, but you just take that first step or you take that first bite. Again, you're young. Everyone here is young. You're not thinking about your tombstone, but there's something about living your life deliberately about what's going to be said in the end. People have always said, it's not because you said you work too much, or it's not too much. Like your kids are not going to be like, oh, I wish Daddy was gone more, or I wish, we had some more money. Usually it's, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more special moments. Those moments in life, you've got to embrace them. And you've got to have enough margin in your life to be able to see them when they arise. But part of that is, just what is success and what elevates. I mean, one, I think that, the framework that God puts down, you live and you walk in it, but also, there's more to this life. And, you need to bring that into whatever craft or whatever thing you're doing and making sure you're living it out, no matter it's going to the store or the person in the Starbucks window or the person, that's filling up your car or the person in the field. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. You treat everybody in a similar fashion. I mentioned before, we're to love people as ourselves, right? It's the greatest command. Love God, love neighbor, right? I don't care that I'm in business. I'm still dealing with the human soul. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Betty, who's upset because of her lawn, she's a human person that should have dignity, right? My employee, like yourself or others, they're a human person and they should have dignity, right? I think human dignity is being lost big time. Today, people are being told for various reasons why they shouldn't be either successful or they need to pay the penalties for the past, or there's something, that they're kind of existentially, guilty of. And I just don't see that in a redemptive God. I don't see that in a path of salvation that the Lord has given to us. It's about how do we restore human dignity. I make my share of mistakes. And I push out of emotion. I'll lose my temper. I'll say something off. Because I also lose sight of that. Let's say you did get angry at somebody, that's life. How you respond to that or how you restore that is what's critical. People make mistakes in the process all the time, but are you really concerned about, I think, their soul and their human dignity? And, I always kind of go back to that. It's like, even if I left something off or I feel because sometimes, being right is not always the best way. You can be right and still harm people. Yeah. Right? That's not the goal. The goal is not to be right. The goal is to, I think, one, be within truth, but restore dignity, but also that brings up people's excellence. You want people to rise. They say rising tide lifts all boats. You want to remove obstacles. You want to allow people to succeed. You want to help them restore and get over problems in their life, be able to become more of a whole human. Like, I really believe that humanness, a lot of times we say, oh, I make all these mistakes, I'm just being human. And I don't see humanity that way. I don't think that's how the Bible talks about humanity. I don't think that's how God views humanity. Sin may define that, but a human person is to be the wholeness of what God made us to be in his image. And that is fully restored. That is fully full of life, having the peace of God, having the ability to be able to not be controlled by the elements of your world. So in a lot of ways, I think being a leader, when you see conflict or you see problems, part of this is how can I help to restore that person, to grant them dignity, help them to become the fullness of who they really should be.
Last question. I think this one would really hit home. Very purposeful question. In doing what you do, as Dave Schlup, as the CEO, as the president of Scienturfic SOD, and as the human Dave Schlup, how does your morals and your ethics kind of make you feel? Like, how does it make you feel about yourself at the end of the day, in your heart and in your mind?
In life, honestly, because I'm a person of faith, honestly, I have the audience of one. And I really do perform for God in what I do. I know all of us are going to stand before him and we're going to give account for our life. And fortunately, I think for the work of God and what God has done for us, it's through faithfulness. But to live out, I think what God has shown us and given to us is really probably the number one thing I'd want to be remembered for, and did I do that well? Secondarily, I think you need to be living of what's going to be written on your tombstone. What are people going to remember in terms of the memories, in terms of the impact? Money is fleeting. You can store up a bunch of money and no one's going to ever remember you necessarily for it. In a lot of ways, it's negative. But it's those moments that you can capture with people. That's what people remember. And you have to have enough margin in your life that when that moment arrives, you capture it. It's very easy to be too busy or too consumed, and you miss those moments. But those moments, when they come, they can change directions of people's lives. And one, you have to have enough kind of, growth in your own life to recognize those moments. But when those moments come, you got to be bold and courageous, and you got to intervene, because I think we live our lives to be redemptive, to love our neighbor as ourselves. We are to look beyond the circumstance and try to, again, lift people up. And so what would I want to be remembered for? Honestly, I love just to know that, I made an impact in somebody's life. That somebody's life was positively changed, that somebody, I believe, heard the word of God in a new way, saw it in my life, was impacted because of really giving cold water to somebody who was thirsty. Because I think in this world, and this is what I even learned from my dad and from others around me, when you go to funerals and when you are around people that have passed, those are the stories people talk about, and those are the things that people remember you by. His funeral, dozens of people would come to me and say, "Hey, did you know that your dad paid $1,500 a month for my epilepsy medicine for a year? Did you know that when I was a security guard, he actually taught me how to farm, and today I've got my own farm because of your dad? Did you know?" I had so many did you knows after his funeral, or even at his funeral. It really inspired me to kind of lay down his legacy and to kind of follow into his footsteps.